Hello guys, once again welcome back to the channel Rahul Automation Studio. So I have explained a couple of TestNG concepts in my previous videos, like how to create a TestNG and add in your Eclipse and how you can add in your project. And in the similar way, I have also explained about different annotations and about the @test or about some other annotations also I have explained, like invocation count, timeout, and all others. So if you have not watched those videos, please watch those videos, and it is very helpful for you. So today in this video, I'm going to explain you one more concept about the TestNG. So that is about the dependencies. Okay, guys. So dependencies. You must be worrying about I am talking about the pom.xml dependencies. No, guys. So this is not about the pom.xml dependencies. So dependencies are something different concept in the TestNG. So dependencies I will explain is basically, suppose there is a scenario, or definitely it is a requirement also in the application, like you are having a 100 of test case in your project, and to run the 100 of test case, definitely there will be some preconditions that you want to be satisfied or that you want to be successful before executing each and every test case. So example is like maybe launching a browser, right? Or the example can be proper successful login into the website. So until like successful login is not there, you don't want to run your test case. So you would be like to skip the test cases, because definitely if login is not successful or first step of your test case is not successful, so then how it will pass your rest of the test case? Like, so in that case you would like to define some kind of dependencies on some method or on some test cases, right? So that is called as a dependency, that your test case is dependent on some another test case. Until or unless that test case will not execute and pass, so this test case will not execute at all. So you can define the dependencies for you, right? I hope you understood the scenarios and the requirement, right? Like I will share, open a URL. So suppose this is your test case. Open a URL. After that, enter username and password. Click on sign in, right? And after that, once you will click on sign in, definitely. So after sign in, you will be landing on the profile page, profile or home page, right? And after that, suppose you are performing some action in your profile, like edit the profile name. Suppose this is your test case, and same kind of scenarios, this is for test case number 1, and similarly you are having some another test case, that is for test case number 2. Okay, and the steps, number of steps, like launching a URL, entering the username and password, click on sign in, and a successful login. Once it successful login, like landing on the profile page. And here in second test case, you are not entering the profile name, instead of that you are verifying the profile name. So this is your test case 2. So what is common? The common is like profile. Your successful login is profile. Until and unless you are not able to successfully log in into the website, no need, like no need to run this. No need to run this. This is very useful, not useful, right? So in that case, you would like to add the dependency. So how you can define the dependency? So dependency you can define like, instead of writing this under this test case, okay, you can write one test case, that is depends method, some depends test case, and this will be for having this number of steps. You can remove it like from here also, right? So now this is one of the method, one of the test case that will be launching and adding. And after that, you are having another test case that is for editing the profile name. Test case 2 is there, which is for verifying the profile name. So this test case is now dependent on this particular test case, right? In the similar way, this test case is dependent on this test case until and unless it will not open a URL, it will not able to open the URL and enter the proper username and credentials. I mean, you don't have to execute this test case because it will be failing for you anyway, right? So this is how you have to define the dependency. So until and unless this test case is not getting passed, please don't execute the remaining steps or other test case. You can mark it as a fail for you. Okay, so this is called as a dependencies. And also there are two different type of dependencies are there. Okay, so two dependencies. One is hard and another one is soft. Now, what do you mean by hard and soft? So definitely by the name you can see. So something will be like soft means to say like it will be dependent on the method, but it is not necessary that it will pass or fail for you, right? But still you want to execute it, like your soft assertion and hard assertion, right? So hard assertion, if hard assertion is there and if it is failing, so test case will be marked as a fail. But in soft assertions, if the assertion is getting failed, even though it will continue on your next steps of the test cases. So that is our soft assertion. So in the similar way, we have hard dependencies and soft dependencies. So in hard dependencies, it is mandatory to pass the depend method, right? And in second, it is not necessary, not mandatory to pass it. So even though this test case will fail, but still this test case will be executed for you in case of the soft dependencies. And in hard dependencies, if this test case is failing, in that case, this test case will not execute and it will be marked as a skip for you. And so why we are doing like that, why we are defining the dependencies? Because if we know that home page is not proper loading and we are getting some server exception on the home page itself, so why you want to run the complete suite hundreds of test cases? Because it will take a lots of time for you, right? And why do you want to waste your time? So instead of that, you can mark the test case on dependent on it. Once it will be passing, then only run, otherwise don't run the test cases, and mark it will mark it at skip, and we can get our reports and easily we can get the time for fixing it also, right? So this is called as the dependencies, hard dependencies and soft dependencies. Now let's see in our practically how we can do that. And one more thing also I want to define is like, so dependency, if you want to define the dependencies, so there are two ways that you can define the dependencies. Okay, one is depends on methods, second one is depends on groups. Okay, so there are two ways that you can define the dependencies. So depends on method means it can depend more than one method. A list of methods it can depend until and unless those methods will not get passed, these test cases will not be executed. So these are mandatory to pass. In the similar way, you can define the multiple groups on the test cases, okay, on which it is depends. It is a list of groups that you can define on which the test cases depends on. So there are two ways, depends on method and depends on groups. So let's see one by one how you can do it. So first we will be talking about the hard dependencies with the help of depends on method and depends on groups. Secondly, we will see about the soft dependencies, how you can achieve the soft dependencies. Okay, so let's create a new file. So we can create like dependency tests, right? And we don't have to include the main method, just click on finish, and here we will define the method public void, suppose tc we can define as a tc like open url, right? This is one of the method or one of the test case you can say. And there is another test case. Now we will be writing one test case. Okay, so public void tc underscore uh, verify title, right? Now here we have to open the URL. So we already have the code for it. First of all, we will define our WebDriver. I am not much explaining about the Selenium here because we are covering the TestNG concepts here, right? So we will be importing it from Selenium, and we can copy paste it from this code, right? So this is the code to launch a Chrome browser and to open a website and to maximize the browser, right? And in second test case, also in the test case, what we will do, we will define like driver dot get title. We will get the title and we will verify it. So we will store in a variable string title, right? And we will print it also. So system dot out dot println, and we have to print the title and we have to verify it also. So to verify the actual value with the expected value in TestNG, we can achieve with the help of assert. So you have to use assert dot, and it defines multiple methods that what kind of value you want to compare, like Boolean value, long value, double value, string value, integer value, any object value, array, list. So that kind of values you want to compare and assert actual with expected value, because alternatively the test case will end with a verification what you are expecting and what is coming in your real life, I mean real application. So based on that, this is a verification only in the test, right? So they provide all type of different type of verification that you can use. Assert equal and assert not equal also they provide you. So you can see assert equals, assert no order, assert deep, assert not equals are there, right? Assert true, assert not true if you want some boolean value to compare, right? So we will be comparing a string value, right? So we have to use as a string. Let me check for the string. Where is strings? They are string value, so that you can define. So first we have to define the actual. So actual is coming as our title, and in the expected, what we are expecting? We are expecting as a Google. I think Google will be the title. We will check it. So if that is coming, our test case will pass. Otherwise, our test case will fail. Now we have to define the dependencies. So first of all, we have to define it as a test case, right? So this is a test case, and we have to import it from TestNG, right? So we will import. Now this is the one test case, and we have to define this is dependent on this particular method. Why? Because until and unless you will not launch the browser and open the URL and it is not a proper open, no need to run this, right? You will not get the title also. So this test case, this method should be passed for this test case. Otherwise, it has to be skipped. So to define it in TestNG, they have provided one parameter that you have to define like depends on methods. So syntax problem can be there. We'll import it. Depends on methods. So guys, you can see they are providing, you can define depends on groups and depends on methods. We will see one by one, and we are looking into the hard dependency with the help of depends on method. So as it is defining the methods, so you can see, you can read it. The list of methods, you can define a list of methods. Okay, list of methods depends on. There is no guarantee on the order in which the method depends on will be read. Like if methods are depends, like two methods or three methods are there, but we are not sure which method will be executed first. Okay, we are not sure about it. It can pick it any sequence, but you are guaranteed that all these methods will be run before the test method that contain this annotation is run. Furthermore, if any of these methods was not a success, this test method will not run and will be flagged as a skip. So if you want to even set the methods, so in that case, you can define this as a test case like at the rate test, and you can define the priority in which sequence you want to execute. This depends on methods. Okay, that also you can do. But for now, let's see one by one. So this is depends on this method. So let's see, click on run. So as it depends on this, it has to be executed and it has to be passed also. Okay. So what it is saying basically, we have not annotated it, right? Which is or not included. So we have to add the at the rate test, right? So this is depend on this. Now let's run it. So it is launching the browser and you can see successfully launched and it is passed. It has run only one time. You can see run was two, but it was one failure and one pass. So one failure is our this title we are verifying, right? Because we have given small g and it has to be capital G. Okay, so this method is depends on this. Suppose this method will fail. I am marking it as a fail. I will not launch a proper URL. And see, it can be an error that in test data you have defined some wrong URL, and right. So and you are running your suite. So in that case test should not be run because your URL is not correct. So your test case will be marked fail at this stage only, right? And this test case should be marked as a skip. Why to execute it, right? So let's execute. And as this method depends on test case underscore open URL and it has to be passed. And we are using hard dependency here, right? So let's see. So as this is not the proper URL and it is also taking a time, and I just want to show you the result. So in the result, you can see total run was 2. One test case was failure. One is failure because of our test case 1, and like skip is there 1. So second test case is skipped for us. You can see skipped tc underscore verify title. This is our second test case, right? Verifying the title, and this method has skipped. Why? Because depends on not successfully finished, right? The method in which it is depends, that's not successfully finished, so that's why it will mark as a skip for you. So this is called as a depends on method. Also, this is one the dependent, right? And also you can mark depend on the two methods also, guys. Group of methods also you can define. So similar way, just you can do this, and we will close it, right? And so we will remove this maximize from there. So we will maximize in another test case, right? So once URL should be open, we will maximize in another window. We will maximize only if this will be passing, right? And then we will be running our test case. So this is how you have to do. So just let me see, guys. There was some network issue. Um, so where we were on the page that we can define on more than one method also. So in that case, you can define more than one method and we can give another name for it. So we can give, instead of TC, just we will give it. I want to give some name so that it has to execute first. So for that, I want to define A for it. Okay, so now this method depends on this. Also, we want to define that it has to be dependent on this method also. So we can define on more than one methods, right? Like this. But we have to define in curly braces as we're defining more than one values. So we will define it like this. Now this test case depends on methods, two methods. One is this test case, another one is this one. Okay, now let's try to run it. So it is starting launching the browser. Actually, if it is depends on more than one method, right? So it can pick any of the dependent method to be execute first. So to avoid the confusion, like in the sequence it has to execute, you must set the priority on the dependence methods, guys. You can see one is failure and pass. So just let me give the proper URL and we'll see to run it. Then I will show you how you can define the priority on it so that it should be executed in the sequence. It can pick actually any dependent test case to execute first, but we have to launch the Chrome and URL first instead of just maximizing the browser, so it will throw an error. So in that case, you can define the priorities that first it has to execute this method, after that this method, only after that it will execute our main test case. So URL is opening and it is taking some time to load it, the URL. Looks like some network issue. We'll see. So first it is executing this test case. If this will pass, or only after that other methods will be executed. You can see all the three test cases are passed and it is printing. First it has executed like this. You can see. So we can define the priority on it. So how we can define the priority? Priority equal to, if we will define the priority for this as a true, and here if we define the priority equal to 1, okay, which is not the correct, because directly it will try to launch this test case, and in this it will try to maximize the browser without launching it. So see what will happen, because automatically also it can be happen, right? It has failed. You can see it has failed. Our second test case that has been failed now. ATC underscore open. It has failed. So instead of it, you have to define just control Z what. It has to be 2 and this priority has to be 1. Now click on run. It is some confusing, but this is the concept that you have to use and you can use, guys. Now you can see it is successfully launched and all the three test cases are passed, because we have given a proper sequence for the execution. So first it is depends on this method, then it is executing this, and finally our test case is getting execute and is getting passed. So this is how that you can define the depends on methods, and in the similar way guys you can use depends on groups also. So let's see depends on groups. So this was about the depends on methods. Let's comment out the complete code. We will do the copy paste of it and just copy this. Now this time we will be doing for depends on groups. So guys, groups you can define on your test cases that this test case belongs to. So how you can define the groups? So groups you can define like groups equal to curly braces and give the name like login. Okay, and second test case is also belongs to the same group, that is login. So you have defined the login group, and now you can define depends on groups. So guys, you can define more than one groups also, and you have to use this login group name for it, and you can remove it like this. So now your test cases depends on the groups that this login group, the test cases which belongs to login group must be executed first, and it has to be passed all the time, and only after that this test case will execute, otherwise it will not execute. And you can define a list of groups also on which that depends on. Okay, so that also you can do. Just click on run. So there's two test cases will be running for you, and only after that if those will be passed, your depends on groups test case will be running for you. So you can see it is pass 3 pass, right? Suppose I will make it as a fail. So let's see if this test case will be skipped for you. So I will make this group as a fail, and we'll see. Just click on run. So I will be opening a incorrect URL, and what, let's see. So you can see guys, in this run was there. So pass is one, failure one, skip one. So our one test case, that is TC underscore verify title, has been skipped. Why it is skipped? So it is skipped because it depends on, it was depends on group. So that is not successful finished method in groups. Okay, so this method was not successful in this particular group. So that's why it is marked as a skip, because this is we are using as a hard dependency. So this is the one group that we have defined, and it depends on this particular one group. We can define the number of, you know, groups also. So first is like login, and second also you can see give like home, and you can define like it depends on number of groups. Login also and home also, both should be passed. These are two different groups. One group is login, another group is home, and depends on method. Uh, Depends on two groups now, login and home, and these two should be passed. All the test cases related to these groups should be passed for this particular test case. Otherwise, this test case will be marked as a skip. Let's click on run, and as this will be fail for the login, so definitely this test case is going to be skip for us. And I will show you next for the passing stage also. So you can see pass is failure one, skip is one, and I will make a proper URL and just run it. So this time all the three tests should be passed, because it will work properly, and it depends on two groups, login and home, and both should be passed for us. Yes, you can see Google was the title. These all are passed. Three has run and three has passed. There is no skip this time, right? So it depends on number of groups also. So this is called as a hard dependencies. And how you can define the dependencies? So dependencies you can define depends on methods, depends on groups. You can define one method or more than one method. You can define one group or more than one group on which your test cases depends on. And this is for our hard dependency. Now let's discuss about the soft dependency, how what you want. Suppose you what do you want this time? So this time you want like it should be depend on method, but I want like if it is still not opening or something, I want to still run my test case. It will be depends, but it will not matter that it is passing or failure. But still, I want to that the test case should be run always for me. So that kind of dependencies that you can achieve with the help of one more attribute, that is always run, and you have to mark it as a true. Okay, always run equal to true. If this will be there, so it means this test case will always run because its value is marked as a true. If we will mark as a false, in that case it will become a hard dependencies only. Okay, so you are marking always run equal to true, so it means this test case will always run. Okay, and let's see will it run or not. We will load the incorrect URL, and last time we have seen it was skipping this test case. Let's see what will happen this time. So we are using soft dependency this time. Just see that we will see the console. So URL is not proper, that it is opening. So this time you can see guys, it is running all the three test cases. One test case is passed and two test cases are failure. There is no skip this time, right? Even though it was depends on groups, but it is not skipped. It has marked as a failed. So our all the three test cases were executed. So this is known as a soft dependency. Yes. This is known as a soft dependency. So for that, what you have to do, you have to define always run equal to true. Okay. In the similar way, you can do that on the methods also. Let's see. Let's do on the methods as well. So we'll do on the methods this time. Right, and this is the hard one. We will use the always run equal to true, and we will mark it as incorrect URL, and let's see, click on run. So this test case will run and will mark as a fail. I will show you for the pass also. So incorrect URL is trying to open, and you can see three tests run, two are failure, right? Two are failure. I will open the correct URL this time. Let's see. So all the three will be passed this time. So you can see all the three test cases are passed. If I will remove this as always run equal to true, and if I will load a incorrect URL, and if I will run it, in that case it will be marked this as a skip. See, so you can see this time it has marked it as a skip. And if you will load the proper URL, and then you will run, all the three test case will be run for you, and it will be marked as a pass because there is no error now in your code. So you can see all the three are passed now, right? This is our soft assertion, soft dependency. So this is about the dependencies, guys, that are present in our TestNG, that you can use a hard dependency, soft dependency. You can define depends on methods, depends on groups like that, and you can use priority also there, and you can use always run also there. So this is all about this. And if you have any question, any doubt, please comment in my video, and please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Thanks to everyone. Thanks all. Bye bye.